Hello, first prep student. Today we are going to continue our science session تحت رعاية وإشراف وزارة التربية والتعليم. First, I would like to revise what we have taken in the previous lesson. We took before what's meant by matter, anything that has mass and volume. What's meant by mass, it is the amount of material inside the body. What's meant by volume, the space taken by the body, and we take a mathematical rules, which is density equal mass over volume, and I mean by density here the mass per unit volume. And we talked about the measuring unit of mass and the measuring unit of volume and the measuring unit of density, and we solve a certain amount of problem, and we are going to continue today the problem related to density. Let us continue problems related to density. Okay, we will go solve a problem, science activity. To compare between the density and substance and water, you have to know very important point. You have to know that there is a value for the density of water. You should know it very well, that the density of water is 1 gram per cubic centimeter, and it is a standard value. So the density of water is 1 gram per cubic centimeter, and it is a standard value, constant value. Okay? Time. Let us see step 1. We are going to fill a bowl with water and put the following substance inside this bowl. يعني عندنا jar, we are going to fill it with certain material. Fill it with water and drop in it certain material. A piece of wood, an iron nail, an ice cube, a piece of cork, cork here means rubber, a piece of wax candle, drops of oil. So we have a jar, and inside this jar there is a water, and we are going to drop in it a piece of wood, an iron nail, an ice cube, piece of cork, piece of wax, and a drop of oil. We have here table. This table, we are going to calculate the mass and the volume and the density for each one of them. And of course, you know that the density of water, as I mentioned before, it is 1 gram per cubic centimeter. Okay? So, what about wax? Wax, its mass is 18 gram. I'm going to divide 18 over 10. Why 18 over 10? Because it is mass over volume. I want to bring what? I want to bring the density. So I have here 18 over 10, which is equal 1.8. What is the unit of density? Remind me. Okay, gram per cubic centimeter. Type. I will ask myself, does this piece of wax float or sink? If it is heavier than water, it will sink. If it is lighter than water, it will float. So I have here 1.8. It is lighter or heavier? Of course, it is heavier, so it will sink. Okay? But what about the other? Okay, what about the other? We'll take it all. Okay. Here I have the nail, the iron nail. Its mass is 78 over 10. It will be 7.8 gram per cubic centimeter. Type. Gram per cubic centimeter, 7.8. Does it heavier than water or lighter? Of course, it is heavier. It will sink. طب what about the cork? الcork 9 gram over 10, which is mean 0.9 برضو gram per cubic centimeter. طيب ده معناه ايه؟ معناه انه اخف ولا اتقل؟ 0.9 which is less than 1 so it will float. What about الايس كيوب؟ انا عارفه كلكم هتقولوا it will sink. لا، تخيلوا بقى ان الكيوب ايس كيوب ده lighter than water. افتكر كده تلج في البيبسي دايما بيعمل floating equal 0.5 جرام per cubic سنتيمتر. طيب هيحصل ايه هنا؟ طبعا it will float. What about الوود؟ الوود can sink or float. Let us see. 4 over 10 equal 0.4 جرام per cubic سنتيمتر. ها 0.4 less than 1 or greater than 1? Of course less than 1 so it will float. طيب معنى كده من الكلام بقى ده اللي احنا هنقوله ان اي حاجه lighter than the density of water it will float. واي حاجه heavier than the density of water it will sink. Like what? Like wax 1.8 and the density of water is 1 gram per cubic centimeter so it will sink. Like the nail, iron nail 7.8 which is more than 1 gram it will sink. Here 0.9 which is less than 1 so it will float. The cube of ice 0.5 less than 1 gram per cubic centimeter so it will float. What about the wood? Of course it will float because its density is 0.4 gram per cubic centimeter less than 1 so it will float. طيب there is another one which is oil. I will divide, you can do it by yourself. I will divide here 8 over 10. It will be 0.8 which is less than 1 gram per cubic centimeter so it will float. And of course you know and you noticed it before that oil must float over or at the surface of the water. Okay? طب from here we can conclude what? We can conclude what from here? Let us see. هو هنا بيسألني which is sink which is float as we explained it before. Okay? طبعا أكيد الwater density 1 gram per cubic centimeter. طب we can conclude what? تعالوا نشوف كده. Substance that have a density less than the density of water will float. يعني 0.9, 0.8, 0.7 since it is less than 1 it must float. طيب what about other substance? Substance that have density more than 1 يعني more than the density of water it will sink. طيب وايه كمان بقى؟ تعالوا نشوف هنا life application. يعني ايه life application؟ اي حاجه scientific related to our life نشوف ازاي احنا بنطبقها. Determination the purity of matter. What do we mean by purity? Purity, does it pure substance or not? Like what? Like milk. دايما بنشوف ان ممكن الميلك ده pure milk ولا مغشوش محطوط عليه ميه. نقدر نعرفها ازاي؟ تعالوا نشوف كده. Determination the quality. Quality here means الجودة ده كويس ولا وحش. Quality of powdered milk when compared with the density of natural milk. يعني أنا لو قارنت الباودر ميلك بالدنستي بتاعة الناتشورال ميلك مين فيهم أتقل؟ طبيعي الحاجة اللي بيبقى عندها more density هي اللي بتبقى more pure مش متخففة. فبالتالي هنا أنا بشوف which one this is an applied point بيعملوها دايما في الحياة إن هم to compare between two substances which one is pure and which one في impurities. في impurities دي ممكن تبقى مية فهنا بنقول ان الباودر ميلك هو مثلا بنقول ان هو مور دنس، يبقى هو البيوريتي بتاعته ايه؟ اعلى. water cannot put out petrol fires. ليه مش بيطفوا الحرائق بالميه؟ ايه السبب؟ because water ماله؟ الووتر less dense ولا more dense than الاويل، البترول اويل؟ احنا قلنا قبل كده ان الاويل ماله؟ الدنسيتي بتاعته 0.8 يعني less dense. it will float at the surface والووتر هيبقى تحت. طب ده ينفع؟ لا طبعا ما ينفعش. because the density of oil is less than the density of water. So it will ايه؟ float. It floats over the water and cannot put out fires. Okay? Hydrogen or helium balloons rise up in air. طبعا كلنا بنشوف الهيليوم بالون، انت ما تقدرش ابدا تمسكها، بتطير في الهواء لحد ما تختفي. نفس الكلام الهيدروجين بالون. طب ايه السبب؟ ليه؟ مش معنى اللي filled with air can settle down ونقدر نتحكم فيها. Very important point here should be mentioned. دايما بنقول لكم، بنقول للولاد دايما if you want to be a scientist or one of the people who deals with science, you should be a good observer. What do I mean by good observer? احنا بنبص بنشوف الهيدروجين بالون والهيليوم بالون دايما بيحصل ايه؟ دايما flying in air until it disappear. لازم تسأل نفسك ايه السبب؟ What is the difference between air and hydrogen and helium? If you ask yourself and you know this information, you'll find the answer. ايه الانسر هنا؟ ان the density of helium is less than the density of air. That is why it rises upward. From here we can conclude the reason. In the density play very important role. Okay? طيب تعالوا نشوف application ونحل شوية questions كده ونشوف احنا بنفكر ازاي. Give reason for. Okay? Air is a matter. How do you know that air is a matter? ايه هما الاتنين condition necessary for knowing that it is a matter or not? الاتنين condition, it must has a mass and has a volume, but it must has a mass. طب الاير عنده mass؟ طبعا عنده mass. تعالوا نشوف ازاي. Because air has a mass and occupies a certain space. طب يعني ايه برضو occupy certain space؟ هو الاير هنا ماسك space؟ If you blow a balloon, it will take place inside this balloon. So it can occupy a certain space. It has a volume, of course. طب what about الماس؟ It has a mass. طبعا عندها ماس، مش فيها oxygen ونيتروجين وكربون دايوكسيد all of this. So here air is a matter because it has الاثنين المهمين mass وvolume، وده شرط اساسي. طيب ايه كمان؟ water isn't used to put off petrol fires. ليه؟ احنا لسه قايلينها حالا لسه قايلينها. البترول فايرز، البترول ده عباره عن ايه؟ عباره عن اويل، والاويل floats at the surface of the water. طب ايه السبب؟ ايه السبب ان الاويل floats at the surface of the water؟ لان الدنسيتي بتاعته is less than water. طيب يبقى انا هنا I can put off fires؟ استحاله. ليه؟ لانه دايما هيطلع فوق هيعمل حرائق اكتر. صح؟ لان الاويل ماله less dense than water. Because the density of petrol oil، خلي بالك البترول ده oil is less than that of water. So petrol float on the water surface and water doesn't put out the petrol fire. ده طبيعي طبعا. يبقى انا استحاله استخدم الميه ان انا to put out petrol fires. طيب ايه كمان؟ What's meant by؟ هتقول لي انت بقى. Okay. The density of water is 1 gram per cubic centimeter. طيب حضرتك قلتي ان الدنسيتي 1 جرام per cubic centimeter، بس ما قلتلناش ليه. You can conclude why. لما اقول لك ان الدنسيتي 1 جرام per cubic centimeter, this means what? In each gram of water is distributed on what? On 1 cubic centimeter. يعني عندي كل جرام الماس of 1 جرام is distributed على الفوليوم، يونت فوليوم. طب اليونت فوليوم بكام؟ بكيوبيك سنتيمتر. Each gram is distributed on what? 1 cubic centimeter. يعني الكيوبيك سنتيمتر بياخد كام ماس؟ 1 جرام. تعالوا نشوف كده. This means that the mass of، خلي بالك، the mass of 1 cubic centimeter of water equal ل 1 جرام. الماس equal 1 جرام، بس متوزع فين؟ متوزع على 1 cubic centimeter. اوكي؟ melting point. من أول هنا هنبتدي نفكر بقى ونلاحظ حاجات كتيرة في حياتنا. الأول what's meant by melting. Melting means if you have here مثلا piece of ice, it will melt and change into a water. If you have a piece of chocolate, it will melt and change to liquid state. So melting here means what? أي حاجة بتتحول من الsolid state للإيه؟ للliquid state. زي حاجات كتيرة قوي بقى عندنا، حاجات كتيرة جدا. تعالوا نشوف الأول. الماتر exists in 3 states. مين هما 3 states of matter؟ السوليد والليكويد والجاز. طيب give me example for solid. Like what? Solid state. Iron, wood, ice, cork. أي حاجة solid. أي حاجة solid. طيب liquid state like what? Like water, oil, alcohol. أي حاجة اللي liquid state. طب what about gas? Carbon dioxide, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, helium. Okay? Can you imagine? Okay. What else? طيب احنا قلنا ايه بقى؟ يعني ايه كلمة melting؟ What's meant by melting؟ Melting is the process. هي العملية. It is a process. For what? By which solid change into liquid by heating. I should use heating? Yes, of course. أي حاجة after gaining heat energy ايه اللي هيحصل؟ It will increase in size وهتتحول من السوليد ستيت لايه؟ للليكويد ستيت. طيب هو بس كده؟ ده معنى كلمة melting؟ لا، ده في حاجة مهمة جدا. أنا قلت هنا إيه؟ by heating. طب heating يعني till what limit؟ إيه الليميت اللي بوصل له الهيتنج ده؟ أي هيتنج وخلاص كده؟ لا طبعا، أكيد لازم هيتنج معين، لازم يكون في certain temperature. أوكي؟ طب يعني إيه certain temperature؟ هي التمبريتشر اللي بتحرك لي السوليد ستيت ده تحوله لي الليكويد ستيت عند certain temperature. و every substance has certain melting point, has certain temperature. يعني ايه برضو؟ تعالوا نشوف كده. هنا what's meant by melting point؟ يعني ايه كلمة melting point؟ النقطة دي، مين النقطة اللي بيحصل فيها melting؟ هي temperature of course، لأنها should be differ from one substance to another. It is the temperature. خلي بالك من دي. It is the temperature. You should mention the word temperature. This point means temperature. The temperature at which solid change to liquid by heating. طيب في حد فيكم هيفكر حضرتك قلتي هنا temperature ورجعتي قلتي heating، طب ما هما الاثنين حاجة واحدة. لا I'm sorry they are not because temperature may be cold or hot. لكن أنا هنا I mean what? I mean heating. طب هو في حاجات باي كولينج؟ طبعا في حاجات كتيره باي كولينج هنتكلم عليها later on. لكن هنا if you want to know the meaning of melting point, it is the temperature at which solid change to liquid by heating. I should mention heating? Yes, you should mention heating of course. طيب some solid substance have like this مثلا low melting point. يعني ايه low melting point؟ يعني بيسيحوا بسرعه قوي، بسرعه قوي، يعني ما اقدرش استخدمهم استخدامات معينه هنتكلم عليها دلوقتي. طب زي ايه؟ زي الواكس، الشمع. طبعا اكيد انا قلت لك حاجه، if you want to be a scientist or one of the people who deal with science you should be good ايه؟ observer. لازم تبقى ملاحظ، تلاحظ كل حاجه. الله، هو الواكس melt easily؟ yes it melts easily طبعا. طب what about الباتر، الزبده؟ طبعا melt easy، انت لو سبتها في الشمس هتسيح. طب what about الايس؟ the same. طب يعني دول بيسيحوا بسرعه؟ بسرعه دي يعني ايه؟ يعني بتاخد short time. طب يعني ايه برضو؟ يعني عندها low ايه؟ melting point. يعني بتاخد high temperature ولا بتاخد اقل شويه في التمبريتشر؟ انا ما اقدرش اقول low، بس بتاخد اقل شويه. يعني بسرعه جدا بتحصل ايه؟ it can change from solid state to liquid state easily by يعني temperature بسيط جدا. طب ايه كمان؟ ايه ده؟ ايه كمان؟ high melting point such as iron, gold and aluminium. شايفين الشكل ده؟ if you observe، هرجع تاني لكلمة observe، a piece of iron during melting أو on heating a piece of iron when it start to melt، انتوا متخيلين الهاي temperature اللي بتوصل لها عشان يحصل melting لبيس اوف iron عشان الايرون يسيح؟ can you imagine؟ بيوصل للشكل اللي انتوا شايفينه ده، get red color، بيحمر الاول لانه اخذ very 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 high temperature and it takes time عشان يقدر يوصل للشكل ده. the same as مين؟ as gold. طبعا الجولد انتوا عارفين ان ده صعب جدا، عشان كده هو too expensive، صعب جدا انه يتحول. طب عشان يتحول يحصل ايه؟ it takes very 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 high temperature. طب high temperature معناها ان الميلتنج بوينت بتاعته ايه؟ لازم تبقى ايه كمان؟ very very high. يبقى انا دلوقتي لو عندي ميتال، والميتال ده زي الايرون والجولد والالومنيوم، ايه اللي هيحصل؟ it takes high temperature in order to change from solid state to liquid state. بيسموها كمان مش liquid state، بيسموها المولتن فورم. المولتن فورم يعني ايه المولتن؟ يعني هو الميتال ابتدى ان هو يتحول للليكويد ستيت. طيب يعني ايه بقى؟ يعني معنى كده انها عندها high melting point. yes of course very high. high temperature high melting point. يعني medium temperature، مش هقول low قوي. معناها ايه؟ معناها ان عندها low melting point. اوكي؟ يبقى تاني you should differentiate first. what's meant by melting point? what's meant by melting? You have to differentiate between them. There is a great difference. If I am talking about melting، هقول ان melting it is a process. هي عملية. طب process by what؟ يعني for what reason؟ It is a process of changing solid to liquid by heating. هو البروسيس اللي انا بحول فيه، لكن ما بتكلمش على temperature ولا اي حاجة. مين هو البروسيس ده؟ اسمه melting process. It is a process by which solid can be changed to liquid by heating. طيب اتكلم بقى كلام more scientific، يعني at what temperature؟ في الحالة دي اسميها ايه؟ اسميها melting point. طيب يعني ايه melting point؟ اول حاجة اقولها طالما قلت point اقول على طول it is the temperature. Temperature for what reason? It is the temperature at which solid can be changed to liquid by heating. لازم اقول by heating؟ طب ما انا قلت temperature، لازم تقول by heating. ليه؟ لان تختلف، ما ممكن يبقى cooling. التمبريتشر مش معناها انها حاجه hot. التمبريتشر may be cold or hot. لكن هنا I mean what? I mean heating. Okay? Life application. Let us continue with each other the rest of our lesson. It seems to me it is too easy, right? It's okay. Life application. Here we have 3 pictures: gold, cooking pots, and heating coils. Okay? Type. Cooking pots are made of aluminum or stainless steel alloy. Guess why? Why we use aluminum or stainless steel for cooking? Why we use it? Of course, because it can resist the high temperature and it has a high melting point so that we can cook the food easily. We can't use wax for cooking food. We can't use wood for cooking food, but we can use something like iron, stainless steel, aluminum. Okay? In making alloys, what's meant by alloys? Alloys means mixture of matter by certain ratio. Certain quantity of 2 or 3 metals mixed together, we call it alloy. Okay? So gold, copper, alloy, which is used in making jewelries. Of course, the ring made of gold. You know that it is gold, but it's not pure gold. It is mixed with copper in order to be easily shaped. So we call it gold and copper. We call it alloy, and not pure gold or not pure copper. Okay? Nickel chrome alloy which is used in making heating coils. يعني ايه كلمة heating coils؟ زي بالظبط الهيتر which is used for warming. We connect it with electricity. This electricity produce a large amount of heat through certain wires, can resist the heat, and it has a high melting point. We call these wires heating wires, and if we roll it in a coil, we call it heating coil. يعني لما نلفها على حاجة هو بالظبط زي سلك، ما بنلفه بنسميه heating coil. اوكي؟ طيب give reason. Again, cooking pots are made of aluminium or stainless steel. Why? What is the reason? Because it can resist the heat and it has a high melting point. Okay? Because it has high melting point. What else? البالون ده بنرجع بقى تاني نراجع اللي احنا قلناه. Balloon filled with hydrogen or helium rises upward carrying flags. انت طبعا كلنا بنشوف الكلام ده. افتكر كلمة good observer. ليه؟ طبعا لان هو less dense than ايه؟ the air of course. المفروض ان انت تبقى عارف كل الكلام ده بعد ما احنا قلناه. طيب what else بقى؟ A piece of wood floats on the water surface while a piece of lead ده something is matter like iron like copper عنده high density يعني sink in it. يعني طب ليه الليد sink وليه الwood floats؟ لازم تعمل ايه؟ comparison ما بينه وما بين مين؟ الدنسيتي اوف ووتر. الدنسيتي اوف ووتر 1 جرام بير كيوبيك سنتيمتر، يبقى لازم ايه؟ الوود يبقى less than 1 جرام بير كيوبيك سنتيمتر. طب what about lead must be ايه؟ more than 1 جرام بير كيوبيك سنتيمتر. why? because it is more dense, that is why it is sink down. طب ليه الوود؟ لانه less dense floats at the surface. Because the density of water is smaller than that of water, density of wood is smaller than that of water, while the density of lead is larger. طبعا heavier than water. Okay? Thank you, my student, and we will see you later on next session. Bye bye.